Bubble, 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 bubble.
Double bubble, boil and trouble. Somebody should make a bong spell, I swear.
Right? It's witchcraft.
Hey, it's 4:20 a.m. Hi, and welcome to episode 60 of the Stoned Witches Hour. Grab a seat, pack a bowl, and maybe turn on a few extra lights. Listen in as we smoke more than a little cannabis and tell true-ish tales of paranormal events, ghoulish crimes, and things that go bump in the night. And bringing you a blast from her own haunted past, I'm Layla.
And I'm going for 60 bowl hits on episode 60 because
No
I'm
shit.
Shell. Because I'm Shell, and that's what Shell does.
That's what Chelle does.
So we're going 60 for 60.
I love that. Holy shit. All right, Chelle.
If anybody can do 60 for 60, it's me.
It's definitely Chelle. That's true. Are we going to keep a tally running?
I mean, we could.
Are you going to start now?
I'm starting right now. So, well, I take my first on air hit. Why don't you talk about what you're smoking?
All right. Well, today, actually, I am smoking some weed that was grown from clones. One of my brothers got this from a friend. Don't remember the name of the cultivar, but I do remember where he got it from because I love the name. This is a place called Hippie Chick Farms. And I met these people a while back at a festival, and they happen to be growers in upstate New York. And as you know, I'm currently in New York, which is where some of my stories are going to be for the next few episodes. I saw their website, and apparently they are getting into the clone market. So what they do is they grow cannabis, make clones from their photoperiod plants, and then they sell the clones so that other people can grow and they help people grow. And I love clones. They really take a lot of the work out of photoperiod plants because that whole first 6 weeks of growing is over and done with. You can go straight to flower and it's much faster.
That sounds complicated.
It's probably because I'm high and chatty. This is a sativa dominant hybrid. And again, I don't remember what it is. I'm sorry, but it's very light green, super crystally, very fresh and sticky. You know, the kind of weed where you might want to let it sit out for a second before you pack it in your bowl because it's just too resiny and sticky.
Nice.
Very nice. And as you can tell by my glassy eyes and my fast rate of speaking, I am high as a kite and having a great time.
Well, mark me down for my first 5 hits.
All right.
I am actually, I don't believe what I'm smoking, so I'm going to call it mystery weed.
Ooh, so for your 60 for 60, what's this mystery weed like? And what do they say it is and why don't you believe it?
Okay, so I got this from a friend. First of all, let's start
Okay,
there.
so we're both smoking friend of a friend weed.
So this is not like tried and true, tested by a store type stuff. So I'm told that this is sour diesel.
Oh, I love me some sour diesel.
So if I handed you something and said sour diesel and you smoked it, you'd be like, either yes, it is, or no, it's not, right?
Yes,
No,
correct.
it's not. No, it's not.
Oh,
I'm telling
no.
you, no, it's not.
So it's one of those things, much like some of the Jack Hare that I've complained about, that it just does not have the distinctive notes that you would expect from a sour diesel. None
Right.
of that gas, none
No,
of the lemon, none
no,
of it.
no,
None
no.
of that completely mule kick you between the eyes, make you super high sour diesel. No.
Like, I'm not saying it's not good because it's good and it's making me chatty and it's making me eat my Snack Factory pretzel crisps,
Who still haven't sponsored us. So
right?
weird,
Bitches. But anyway,
right?
no, we love them because they make good pretzel crisps.
Yeah, we love them.
But like, it's good weed and I'm high and I'm happy and I'm chatty. I am not agreeing that this is sour diesel, though. So I am going to put it in the category of mystery weed.
We're still in the wild, wild west. I can't tell you how many times I grew out bag seed of something that I bought, but I made up a name to give it because nothing that we smoked back then had names.
Right.
If something had a good flavor, I would grow it out, but it was just either good weed or dirt weed.
Right.
That was it. So I would make up a name for it. So I don't know. Somebody could still be growing, Layla cookies that, that I made up the name for back in the day. I don't know.
But I think this is one of those things where people call it something thinking, oh, if I call it sour diesel,
It'll
People
sell
will,
better.
it'll sell better, it'll sell more, I can raise the price, what have you. They don't understand there's people out there like me where I've smoked my fair share of legit sour diesel, so I know that this is not sour diesel.
Right. They're banking on the fact that people will have heard the name before and know it's good, but still be inexperienced enough to not know that that's not really what they're getting.
And that's not what I got.
I gotcha. I
But
gotcha.
I'm happy with it, but it's not what they said it was.
I gotcha. Yeah, I've had that happen most particularly with Jack Herer. Not as often with gelato, but I have had some gelatos that didn't have that right taste or, quite the right high. I think once we get into more of the labeling with the terpenes and everything, we're going to move away from that because we'll know better what we're getting.
But I did want to, speaking of labeling, I did want to point something out to you.
What's that show?
Circle back to a previous episode. I do have some store-bought here. It's just not what I'm smoking right now, but I do have some store-bought here. And on this particular label, they do break out the THCs like we've talked about in the past, THCA, THC9, they have CBGA, THCVA, CBDA, CBG, and then regular CBD. But then they have a category called total cannabinoids.
Yes,
I like that.
I do
Just
too.
give me the total.
Right?
I don't give a shit about your breakdown. Just give me the total.
And I like that as well because some people want the breakdown, some people just want the total. So having both is a perfect compromise.
We need to, when we can get the federal government to legalize everything, we also need to standardize labeling.
Well, they need to make you and I the empress and the czarina of weed so that we can tell them to nationalize the labels. That all needs to be consistent. Everywhere you go, it needs to be the exact same kind of breakdown so that you know exactly what you're getting.
Now, another thing I wanted to mention to our listeners while we're talking about the weed, the devil's lettuce. I sent you an article this week and I was like, what the holy hell? Here's the title of the article. And this article was posted on, I don't even know what date this is, March 9th, 2023. DailyMail.com. Anybody who knows me knows I have a fascination with Daily Mail. So the title of this particular news article, Cannabis Completes Its Coup. More Americans now favor legal marijuana over legal tobacco, survey shows.
Woohoo!
The percentages actually lie down to 59% are favoring legalized marijuana, whereas 57.3% are favoring making tobacco smoking illegal.
I love that. I love that.
So I'm gonna have a flip-flop in my life here. I'm gonna go from smoking my freaking pipe is gonna be legal as shit and smoking my cigarettes I'm going to prison for.
That is quite the flip-flop for you. Now, I am someone who has zero skin in this game because I've only ever been a pot smoker. I like whiskey, I like wine, but I don't really drink. And I've never smoked cigarettes. The occasional clove cigarette, back in my college days.
We thought we were so cool smoking.
So cool. But, the occasional clove because I like the taste. The occasional blunt, same thing. Other than that, zero tobacco. So I don't really care. I just know that it's bad for people. It's bad for you, Chelle. It's terrible for you.
I know. And unfortunately, I do have skin in the game because I've been a pack-a-day smoker for probably 30 years now.
Since before I knew you.
Yeah.
And that's been a long time.
I started smoking a long time ago. And so I do have some skin in the game. And, here's the funny thing about smoking. I could quit and I could be okay with quitting. But when you're in a relationship and you're living with someone, you both have to be in it to win it because one of you can't quit. If I could convince my love to quit, I could actually quit and be okay with it. But yeah, 57% of Americans want smoke. Like, I would have expected that news article to be like, oh yeah, they want alcohol to be illegal again. And here we are, we're going underground. No, we're going to have to go underground to have a cigarette.
Wow, what a flip-flop. What a flip-flop.
Yeah, who would have thought? Remember when we were growing up, the damn Marlboro Man? Now 57% of Americans want tobacco to be illegal.
That kind of reflects the fact that people are realizing that cannabis was illegal for racist and political reasons, but it was good for you. now they're realizing that tobacco was legal for racist and political reasons. And now they're realizing it's not good for you. And so I think that's where the flip flop is coming is, with more knowledge, we do things differently.
And I want to point out that the way the survey was done, it is actually, to be very specific, the question was asked, legalize marijuana for any use, and 59% said yes. So
I
we're
love
not just
that.
talking medical or things of that nature. It was specifically listed for any
Any
use,
use.
59%
Nice.
of Americans.
Well, go weed.
That's very telling because if you would have done that when, Nancy Reagan, Dare days,
Oh, yeah, right.
we've come a long way in our lifetime.
It was really the devil's lettuce back then.
It really was. I mean, in God bless Nancy Reagan, but geez, she had it out for the pot smokers.
Yeah, she did.
So to now see 59% want it legalized for any use, we've come a long way. And I'd love to see that happen. I'd love
Me
to see
too.
that happen.
I was hoping it would happen in our lifetimes, and I'm glorying in it right now. But while I continue to suck this down and Chelle continues on her quest of 60 hits on our 60th episode, how you doing there, Chelle? What are we up to?
Okay, I'm gonna take another hit. I'm gonna take another couple hits here real quick. And
Okay.
I want you to tell me while I'm puffing and puffing and piping, what are you talking about this week?
I got two things for you. Again, one is a very short personal story that I learned from my sweet mother. As I've mentioned, I'm in New York State right now, and my grandmother is about to turn 100 years old.
No shit.
No shit.
That's fucking awesome.
It really is. She's amazing. Very great lady. Now, to celebrate, one of the things that we did recently was she went out to have brunch at the Belhurst Castle in Geneva, New York, which is where our story is going to take place. Belhurst Castle is a famous hotel and restaurant that is on Route 14. As you're heading out of Geneva, just past Hobart and William Smith colleges, you'll see this gorgeous stone castle on the shores of Seneca Lake. I grew up in Geneva, New York.
I've never heard this story. Oh my God, I want to. Oh, wow. Keep
So
going.
my main story is going to be about Belhurst Castle. Since I knew that my almost 100-year-old grandmother, April 4th, by the way, is her 100th birthday. So Grandma Jenny, happy almost birthday.
Happy birthday, Grandma Jenny. Woo woo.
So because they were going to the Belhurst, I told them all about the ghost story that I had heard growing up in the area. And we had to talk about the lady in white because this does include a lady
You and
in
your
white
damn
story.
lady in white. Jeez, you always end up back to a lady in white.
Maybe this is why, because I grew up with this story and I grew up just down the shore on Seneca Lake. So it's kind of in my blood. So I had to explain what a lady in white ghost story was. So my mother turns to me and says, "Oh, I was that once."
Wait, what? Because I know your mom. So what?
That was kind of my reaction too. I'm thinking, did you not understand what I just said? But she then proceeds to tell me that when she was pregnant with me, I don't get my nomadic wandering nature from, out of the blue. My mother and father lived in quite a few different places all over the country before I was even born. So while she was pregnant with me, just before I'm born, she's hugely 9 months pregnant. They rented an old farmhouse. It hadn't been lived in decades. And
That sounds like such a thing your parents would do.
absolutely. My father has written poetry about it that has been published. They lived very simply, barefoot hippies, basically, and we're kind of trying to fix up this farmhouse, clean it out. So she's living there. There's no electricity in this house. So she's using like oil lamps and candlelight. And after I'm born, I guess I wasn't a very happy baby in the evenings. So she would very often get up at night and light a couple candles and walk holding me in her long white nightgown. Now, the windows in this farmhouse had long since broken out because it had been unoccupied for so long. And they had stapled up some of that plastic sheeting that you can kind of see through, but not really. Well, after a few nights of this, the owner of the property came over to talk to my mother, and he couldn't stop laughing to tell her the story. Apparently, one of his neighbors had come to him.
Oh, no.
all sorts of upset and
Oh
scared and
no.
shaking because he and his wife had seen a ghost, a lady in white walking back and forth in the unoccupied farmhouse that no one had lived in for decades. And it kept happening night after night. The light would suddenly come on at 2 a.m., and a woman in a long, flowing white dress would
Oh
pace back and
no.
forth in the farmhouse. After the third night of this, they were so frightened that they called the they called the owner to tell him that there was a ghost at his farm.
You have been wreaking havoc since the beginning of your time.
Since the days I was born. So, yeah, so my mother literally was a lady in white ghost story.
That is hysterical. Oh my God. Only your parents, man.
All right.
Only your parents.
My dad is enough of a character that our friends group had the Layla's dad stories time at any party that we would go to. We would have to tell Layla's dad stories because he has gotten up to so much crazy things. But that's a different podcast.
What are you talking about? We still do.
So the Belhurst Castle that started this whole my mother was a lady in white ghost is a very historic place, and it has a long history of being haunted. It is an absolutely stunning spot on Seneca Lake. It's right near the Glenwood Cemetery, which is a place that I spent a lot of time in as a teenager.
No.
Well, I loved photography and quiet places, and it was a beautiful place to go and take photographs. So all my early photography history is just filled with pages of graves and creepy trees over at Glenwood Cemetery. But I would sometimes sneak onto the grounds at Belhurst Castle, and they were known for having peacocks that roamed the entire grounds
Oh, that's
and
so
wild
cool.
birds. And I learned in my research of this story why. So we'll get into it. But anyway, so the history of Belhurst Castle goes all the way back to Native Americans. As you know, the Finger Lakes area of New York State was a very well-populated area.
Is it an actual castle?
It is an actual castle.
Oh, how can I be from New York State and never have heard of this?
Oh, good gracious, Shell. We are going to stay there. This is definitely going to be a fuck around and find out place. We'll bring
No
our Ouija
shit.
boards. Oh, yeah. We're going to take in the gorgeous views and we're going to find us some ghosts.
Well, the
So,
Finger Lakes area, if for anybody who's never been in that area or knows nothing about it other than the wine, gorgeous, gorgeous, like gorgeous.
people do stay there for the wine trail. They also serve some of their very own hard ciders, I believe, that's made just for them. But anyway, Belhurst Castle is located on a spot in Seneca Lake that was the site of where the Council of Six Nations of Iroquois would come and meet. It's
Oh, okay.
it's an absolutely beautiful spot. Now, it was originally part of the state of Massachusetts.
Really? The
Yes.
castle itself?
The land that the castle sits on. There was no castle at that time. It was just
But that's
empty
way
land,
over on the other side of New York.
right? So I didn't know that either, that parts of New York were originally Massachusetts. In the early 18th century, it was purchased by some land developers in 1738. It changed hands a few times between 1738 and 1810. In 1810, it was purchased by two men who built the Ontario Glass Manufacturing Company, which was the first glass company this side of Albany. But they bought the land. They sold it to a man named Joseph Fellows. So it changed hands a lot of times before it was ever actually built on. It was sold to Joseph Fellows, who was a native of England, Warwickshire, England. And in 1830, he built the first modern, what they're calling a modern residence on the land. It's a house called the Hermitage. And he never lived there. A man named Henry Hall lived there. And the locals knew him as Buck Hall. And he didn't really like the locals. He didn't do anything with anybody. He kind of kept to himself. He lived there by himself with just one servant. It was rumored when he had come there, he had come with a woman, but most people just knew him living there with a servant alone. How many hits are you at anyway?
Let's see. I'm actually keeping track on my little piece of paper. I'm at 16.
Well on track, well on track. So Henry Hall lived there very, mysteriously, had come with a woman who was no longer there, just lived alone with a servant and kept to himself. In the spring of 1836, it's said that Buck Hall fell over something and broke his leg. Now, he didn't seek any type of treatment for this. His desire to be alone went so far as he didn't want any doctors there.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, he died of like sepsis, blood poisoning, shortly after breaking his leg.
Oh, that's horrible because like not people don't realize that you can actually get sepsis from a freaking broken bone.
Right? He didn't. Even worse, after he died, it all came out that his name was not Henry Hall. His name was actually William Henry Buck, and he had been a treasurer of the Covent Garden Theatre in London.
Who was he hiding from? Because that's what back then when people changed their names like that, they were hiding something.
Well, as the treasurer, he stole a ton of money from the theater,
Shocking.
married his stepmother,
Ah!
and then ran away to the United States and assumed the name Henry Hall to try and hide. Now, it's rumored that the woman he traveled with to the US was an actress that he was having an affair with, and she was never seen again. So, the property, when it was built, had a secret tunnel built from the Hermitage to Seneca Lake. The way this whole land sits, it doesn't go down to like a nice beach up to the lake. It's kind of a hill with pretty much a sheer drop off.
Almost like New York's version of cliff.
Yeah, like a big cliff. It's
Right.
not like the White Cliffs of Dover High or anything like that. It's just
Right.
a good-sized hill high.
New York's version of cliff.
Exactly. Now, William Henry Buck, known as Henry Hall, after this house had been built for him, had had a tunnel built from the cellar of the house, the Hermitage, down to the lake, so that if people came for him, he would have an easy way to escape. So after he passed away, it again changed hands a few times, and it was purchased by a man named Harrison Otis. And he's the one that named the property Belhurst, and it means beautiful forest. His family transferred the property back and forth a few times, and a woman named Mary Otis sold the small rocky strip of land that goes from that drop off down to the lake. She sold part of that to a railroad company that still operates a railway line there. But she managed a contract with them to allow her access rights across the tracks to the beach. And that contract was so strong, it's over 150 years old and it's still in place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the Belhurst Castle still has access to the beach across the tracks. In 1878, after the Otis family moved to Virginia and they sold the property, it became part of the United States Trust Company, and it stayed vacant for a few years, and the Hermitage kind of went into disrepair. And during that time, the residents of Geneva started to use it like as a picnic area and would kind of hang out there. And that's when the stories of the hauntings first began. People would regularly see a woman around the Hermitage that would disappear when approached. And sometimes they'd see a man that would disappear. And they say that it was the ghost of the actress that had fled England with William Henry Buck. The rumor has it that the tunnel underneath the house that went to the lake was used by this actress trying to flee Buck, because soon after she came to the US with him, she didn't want to have anything more to do with him and wanted to go home. And after one of their arguments, she was trying to run away from him in the tunnels and fell and died there. Then he just kind of disappeared her and no one ever heard from her again.
I love that. I love that term that they used back then. And you've said it twice now. Disappeared her. Like, why don't you just say murdered her? Tossed her in a dumpster. Disappeared her.
Right? Well, it sounds like it could have been murder or just an accident as she was trying to run away.
A quote unquote accident.
Right, because no one, he didn't say, "Oh, my lover had an accident. Come quickly." No, they just never heard anything about it again. It's also rumored that his fall was caused by the ghost, the fall that broke his leg that killed him.
Oh.
So now it's used as a popular spot. People see these ghosts on occasion. On May 13th, 1885, a woman named Carrie M. Young Heron, obviously wealthy, she has like 12 names. She's the wife of Samuel V. Heron of New York City, came up to Geneva and went to what was being known as Otis Grove, where people were going to have their picnics, and immediately fell in love with the spot. She asked the price, purchased it that same day. Can you imagine being rich enough to go someplace on vacation and be like, "I love this place. I'm buying all of it. I want to do that."
We've actually talked about that places we've gone on vacations. Yes, we have.
Yes, we have. That's true. That is absolutely true. But we didn't have the money to do it.
Well, no.
So a few years later, she divorced her husband and moved there with the gentleman that she had actually gone there with to purchase it. I don't know how that worked, but anyways, in 1888, she and her new husband came up to Geneva, tore down the house that the Otis family was living in, and started to construct what is now called Belhurst Castle. Now, when I was growing up, I heard that an entire castle had been imported from Europe, stone by stone, and rebuilt on the spot.
Oh, wow.
The truth of it is pretty close. Almost all of the materials that are used in the Belhurst Castle came from other constructions in Europe. Every stone, every piece of wood, everything.
Oh, wow.
I can't even imagine the cost in 1885 to have all that stuff brought here from Europe and then rebuilt. So she and her husband had 50 men working full time rebuilding this castle on the property. During that time, one construction worker fell to his death while building the tower, and another one reportedly went insane while building the roof. And I couldn't find any more information or details on what they meant by went insane, but apparently it wasn't very pretty, is the best I can find. Now, she also built on the property several other outbuildings, like a carriage house and a fowl house, because she loved Japanese golden pheasants and had several prize birds in her possession. And so she was known for having all these exotic birds that would roam across the grounds. And that's true even when I was a teenager. There were quite a few.
Hence the peacocks.
So there's peacocks and everything that were well known for traveling the grounds. And we would all, as teenagers, of course, sneak on to there or whatever. And the peacocks would usually be a dead giveaway that someone was there because the male peacock was mean as hell and would scream at you.
So they actually still had exotic bird, not say back in your day, but back in your day, they still had the exotic birds.
They did. They very much did. Now, according to local rumor, Carrie loved the secret tunnel that went from the Hermitage to Seneca Lake and the stories about it. And she liked it so much that during construction, she had them expanded. It's rumored that there were tunnels that went from the wine cellar of Belhurst Castle, also from the carriage house, and they both connected to the original Hermitage tunnel that went to the lake.
Now, let me ask you this. I don't mean to interrupt you. Being a teenager in the location I was, we had different underground tunnels and things of that nature. Did you guys ever go to the waterfront, try to find the entrances, and get in that way? And if so, speak to that, because all I can think of is like some haunted water dripping underground tunnel that's sketch that, like, I don't know. I'm thinking like the tunnel from the kids in It.
Oh, no. Actually, they'd all been filled in.
Bummer.
Yeah. And I'm going to get to that here in a second because the actress that died there was not the only death in the tunnels. So there's a more famous ghost, and we're going to get to that right now. So what hit are you at?
Okay, let's see on my little calculator. I'm at 20.
All right, let's keep it going then. The most famous ghost of Belhurst has a story that's very, very similar to the unknown actress that may or may not have died in the original tunnel. This one has a name. I only ever knew her as Isabella, but in my research, I found that it may have been Isabella Robinson. And the Belhurst Spa and Salon is actually named after Isabella.
Now, she was a famous actress?
She was a famous opera singer.
Oh, okay.
She was married to a high-ranking Spanish don who was much older than her and very, very powerful. Unfortunately, as sometimes happens in these May-December romances, Isabella fell in love with another man. She was caught by her husband, and he locked her in her bedroom and threatened to kill her lover. So Isabella and her lover managed to escape and fled to America. And I'm not sure how they ended up at the Belhurst Castle. Some people say that she was friends with Carrie. Some people say that it was a hotel even at that time. So I'm not really sure, but she ended up at the Belhurst Castle with her lover, and they were hiding out there. Unfortunately, her husband found her and sent men after her to get her back. When they came to the Belhurst Castle, she and her lover fled to the wine cellars and into the tunnels, intending to escape down to the lake to a boat that they kept there to get away. But unfortunately, the Hermitage tunnel was so old that it collapsed on Isabella.
Oh, shit.
There's two different endings to this story. The first one that I don't hear as often is that her lover managed to escape to the boat and was away and just grieved her his entire life. The most common story that I heard is that he was distraught and trying to dig her out when the rest of the tunnel collapsed and kept him there within inches of reaching his hand through to his love.
Oh shit.
So she's the ghost that people see, and they'll regularly see her walking along the cliff edge in her white nightgown, searching for her lover that wasn't able to get to her. She's also sometimes seen flying into the windows, almost like a banshee type shrieking ghost in white, going into the windows of the tower room. And some people think she might also be the ghost that sings lullabies that make people fall asleep throughout the castle. There's not much. This isn't a super well-known ghost story, so there's not like a ton out there. But I did find a YouTuber who had actually gone there and stayed with some friends. They did not know about the opera singer and the lullaby ghost.
Uh-huh.
So while they're trying to do some different readings, one of them says he kind of heard the singing, and the next thing he knows, his friend's waking him up. And it continued to happen throughout the night to each one of them. They would hear the singing and then pass out, as he said. And that's been reported by other people. It's also rumored maybe she was pregnant because some people report hearing children playing or crying in another room, even when nobody is there. So I don't know if the opera lady was singing lullabies maybe to her lover's baby when she ran away. Not sure.
Or maybe it was your mother walking you up and down the hall.
Maybe. So Belhurst Castle passed through hands again. And it actually was passed to a man in the 30s, a man named Cornelius J. Dwyer. And he was known as Red. So Red purchased the Belhurst and turned it into a speakeasy and gambling casino.
Ooh, our kind of place.
That's right. The upstairs was a gambling place, and downstairs was the speakeasy and where everybody would go to drink. The liquor came from Canada. It all came down through like the Erie Canal system and then would come down to Geneva. I don't know if that's when the wine taps were installed in the walls, but when I went to prom there, I remember that the staircase, the spiral wooden staircase that they have there, there's a wine tap in the wall that you just pull the tap with your glass underneath, or as us teenagers did, pull the tap with our mouth underneath.
That was actually a black velvet tap. Chelle's favorite cheap, low budget Canadian whiskey.
There you go.
Yeah, that was your black velvet tap.
The wine taps, from what I understand, are still there. And we had a lot of fun discovering those when we went to prom there.
Your prom was at this place?
It was.
Oh,
It was.
shit, man. That's too cool.
And I didn't exactly see a ghost, but I kind of had a spooky experience while I was there.
Ooh.
I was kind of a loner as a kid. You know, I had a group of friends, but I was still kind of quiet and shy. And I was there with my boyfriend, but I needed a minute. You know, we weren't fighting or anything, but I don't think I particularly was like, woo, I love you, we're at prom. And so I kind of kicked off my high heels and was walking in my bare feet through the dark lawn out to behind the Belhurst. You know, there's chairs and things there. And as long as you dodge the birds, you're fine. And you can have a beautiful view of the lake. And so I go back there and I'm sitting in the grass and I'm rolling up a joint. It's gorgeous. I love this lake. I love Seneca Lake. And so I'm hanging out and having a better time by myself, smoking a joint behind the Belhurst than I was at the party because I'm a nerd. So I'm like, hey, I wonder if I'm going to see the lady in white. Maybe I'll see the opera singer. And, you know, we'd all been told that the tunnels were filled in. People had snuck down there past the tracks, and I've never seen any sign of a cave entrance or anything like that. So I'm like, maybe I'll see her. And wouldn't you fucking know it, right after I think that, over by the trees on the edge of the cliff, I see what looks like a silvery white shimmer. And I'm like, holy fuck, it might be a ghost. And then I'm like, okay, maybe it's someone else from the prom. So I'm like hitting my joint all quiet, and I'm looking, peering through the dark, and it starts to shimmer and come a little closer. And I'm like, that is not a person. That is definitely not a person. What the fuck is that?
Oh, shit.
And it gets closer and it starts screaming at me and chasing me. It's the motherfucking peacock. I never got up faster and started running faster in my freaking life. I thought that peacock was going to bite my ass. I was so scared.
You know, that's the thing about peacocks is, unfortunately, it actually could have bit your ass.
Oh, no. So my stoned ass was smart to run away is what you're saying.
They're actually, believe it or not, they're beautiful, but they're violent birds.
It was just apparently the male peacock's tail, maybe catching some of the light from the prom that I had seen. And yeah, it was not a ghost. Very scary, not a ghost. But
Yikes.
but I do have friends that did say that they saw the ghost, including the lady in white on several occasions. When my about to be 100 Grandma Jenny went there, they asked the waitresses, and no one had heard of these legends. So I was a little surprised. But I talked to a couple people who used to work there years ago, and they all had stories of bottles flying off of shelves by themselves and the lady in white walking the halls. There's also a very sweet story about a caretaker, a long term caretaker who lived there, and he passed away in 1972. But he apparently loved the place so much that he hasn't left. And numerous people will describe him walking through the halls or up the stairs. And I guess he had a chair in the lobbies that he would sit in. It was his chair. And people will regularly see an older man in like a handyman uniform sitting there. I also found someone I know who worked there as they cleaned the rooms. They said that sometimes they'd go into a room and start cleaning it, and then the shower would turn on just by itself. And other times they'd be cleaning a room, go in the bathroom to clean, and come back out, and the sheets would be tied on the chandelier.
Oh, wow.
That happened more than once, where an item of clothing or some type of bed linen would be up high, like not where it was supposed to be, like tied to a light or up on the top of the curtains on the windows. So I don't know what that's all about, but a little strange that it happens so often. Now, about the caretaker, a woman named Suzanne Poorman worked there quite a while ago, and she said that she was speaking to some guests. So this couple was having breakfast on the porch, and they said while they were having breakfast the day before, an old gardener had come up to them and was talking to them about their stay. He was very, very nice and seemed a little distracted, then wandered away, and they had mentioned him, but there was nobody that worked there that looked like that. And they found out that he did match the handyman that had passed away in 1972. So apparently the ghost had walked up to this couple and they'd had a little conversation with him without even knowing he was a ghost.
Oh.
Another guest one time was checking out and wanted to mention that the person that was staying in the room next to them had had the most beautiful singing voice. That they had heard this woman singing to her child because they had heard them talking. And she just wanted to comment on what a gorgeous voice this woman had had. But the receptionist said no one was staying. There was no one else staying on that floor. There was no one staying in that room. Gail B was staying in the tower suite. And she said she woke up in the middle of the night because the floorboards were creaking. And she could see a shadow figure pacing back and forth in front of the windows in the room. And she was staying in the turret room.
Has anybody had any encounters that would trace back to the Native American meeting point that was
No.
supposedly located there?
Not that I've heard. No, they were all centered on the man who ran away from England, Henry Hall, so-called Buck. They centered on him. Sometimes people will see him, but mostly they'll see the woman in white. It's mostly Isabella that people see. And I don't know if the actress story is somehow like a pieced off of Isabella's story. Like some people have heard one and kind of conflated the two. I'm not sure, but people do mostly see the woman in white, but sometimes they will see another woman, an older man, and then also the older handyman or the particular specific ghost that they see. But a lot of poltergeist type activity happens there.
Well, and that's kind of some of the problem you have with locations and hauntings and paranormal activity that goes back 100 or more years. These stories kind of get passed down word of mouth and can kind of get jumbled into one big story, where there might have been like, say, 3 instances. 75 years later, that's only one instance. Things get jumbled
Right.
together over time.
Yep. But, they're pretty interesting stories, and people continue to this day. Some of the comments that I've seen and some of the people that I spoke to have had very recent experiences, particularly with poltergeist type activity. So I wonder if wherever they got this castle from, these stones and this wood, if that has anything to do, with the ghosts and with the energy that's there.
Have they brought in a professional psychic paranormal person?
They have not. And it almost seems
All
like
right,
the
Layla, I
current
got a job for you.
for us, we need to go. It seems like the current owners are kind of downplaying that just a little bit.
It looks like they're trying to kind of cash out more as a wedding venue.
Yes, and I imagine wanting to be a wedding venue. Two tragic love stories involving women that died and are now lady in white ghosts.
Aren't going to be good for business.
No. So while I did see initially a little bit of interest in being on like the National Haunted Registry and that type of thing, for the most part, it seems like they're kind of downplaying that it's a very haunted castle.
I would have no problem going there and getting married in the morning and doing a ghost hunt at night.
See, I think they're completely missing out.
There's a niche for this, people.
Yeah. Jennifer, a woman named Jennifer said, ghosts and wine? Yes, please. I mean, you've got ghosts, you've got hauntings, you've got wine on tap in the walls. What more could you want other than a little bit of weed?
And you have a castle.
It's a castle on Seneca Lake. So, yes, we need to go there and conduct a thorough investigation.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can hold my hand so I don't get scared by the peacock.
Who's to say I'm not going to be scared of the peacock?
We can hold hands and run away together then.
Lord, I feel like we would have to have like one of those little netting things on so they can't like poke at your head.
They have built extensively onto the castle. There's an addition that was built on. The food there is fantastic, world renowned. You can stay in the original castle. You can stay in some of like the carriage house and some of the other buildings on the ground.
It's basically like a hotel B&B kind of thing now.
If you stay in the original castle, there's no elevator.
Oh.
The rooms are very clean and very nice and very unique. Some of them have balconies that you kind of climb upstairs to go out on the balcony. Some are in the turret room. You know, they're very unique. Don't go there expecting to have your typical sterile hotel experience. Expect to climb some stairs with your suitcases and have an amazing, gorgeous stay in a castle on freaking Seneca Lake. And hopefully see a lady in white ghost. Send me pictures.
Or maybe it's just Layla's mother walking her up and down the halls because Layla's being a cranky infant.
Maybe that very well could be. I've lost, I didn't even keep count of how many hits I've got, but where are you at, Chelle?
I'm up to 34.
All right. Well, we are about halfway and you are more than halfway. So let's keep it rolling. What story have you got for me, Chelle?
So I'm also in New York State with this story, but a little far away from Seneca Lake. This is down in New York City.
Ooh,
And
okay.
I'm going to talk about what's called the House of Death.
The House of Death?
I feel like there's probably multiple houses of death in New York State.
Well, H.H. Holmes' Murder Castle comes to mind, but yeah. So, okay, what makes this one the House of Death in New York City?
So this is actually in Greenwich Village, which is in kind of the heart of New York City. The house is located at, 14 West 10th Street. Please do not go to this location. It is a privately owned location. Don't harass the people. If you do, video it. I want to know what's This is like one of those things, you know, the gates of hell, the lady in white. We're the only ones.
We're the most haunted.
We're the most haunted. So even though these people are calling themselves the Death House, some have had it listed as the most haunted house in New York City. But again, the most haunted house in New York City is like saying you have the only portal to hell in your cemetery.
Right. The most haunted house in New York City on this street.
Just like there's only one world famous roast beef stand in Massachusetts.
That's right. Or one world's best cup of coffee in New York City.
You know, I'm not necessarily saying I buy into the most haunted house in New York City, but there's some ghosts here and some shitty things have happened at this place. Can you kind of vision these old, like those brownstone houses?
Oh, yeah. Those are super cute. Yeah. Expensive and cute.
Very expensive. Very expensive. Not for the likes of us.
No. Dirty witches need not apply.
This is one of those like revivalist brownstones in one of those like old-fashioned New York City neighborhoods, like the kind you see on Facebook that it's like, oh, New York City in the wintertime. And you're like, really? It's so beautiful. And then you go to New York and you're like, where's that? This house was built in 1856. So we've talked a few times how it seems like the mid to late 1800s.
Spiritualist Central.
Yeah. So this was built on West 10th Street, and it was built by the founder of the Metropolitan Underground Railroad and the Broadway Underground Railroad. His name was Mr. James Borman Johnson. He founded reading rooms, libraries, and the famed 10th Street Studio, which was kind of like an art gallery type thing. He had ended up dying, and his wife and his daughters ended up with this place. When they lived there, things seemed kind of okay. Like they had the place built, lived there for however long, everything was fine. It was the second owners. I've even seen articles. This is so weird because I've seen articles kind of liking this to the Amityville Horror House.
Because it was fake or because of the stuff that happened?
Negativity perpetuates negativity.
I gotcha. Okay.
So, like, you know how in the Amityville house they say that because there was negative energy in the house, that negative energy influenced the owner to do more negative things.
I gotcha. Right.
So negativity kind of perpetuates negativity. And this has that kind of cycle in it. So it kind of really started earning the reputation as the House of Death. In 1897, we can imagine this was kind of more of an upper class neighborhood in New York, even back then. There was a famed celebrity cyclist, Fred Andrew, and he was the occupier of this location. So you think to yourself, a famed cyclist. So this guy can ride a bike like nobody's business, okay?
Sure.
Maybe where you and I couldn't. This guy can. So on August 9th, 1897, Andrew had a moment of reckless bicycle riding. So
Oh no.
that's what the police report called it, reckless bicycle riding. And it caused him to hit an 8-year-old boy.
Oh no.
And the boy suffered a broken leg, and Andrew
Oh.
was actually arrested. Now,
Well,
granted,
yeah, reckless bicycle driving, sure.
now the boy didn't die, but he did have a broken leg, and that kind of was the downfall of his celebrity cycling career. You know, you freaking
Just
hit a
takes
kid.
one scandal, hit a kid.
You freaking hit a kid, you asshole. So that's kind of where the bad luck started. Now, granted, nobody died in that, but that's where the bad luck started. The next owner, this might be a name from our neck of the woods that may ring a bell to you. The next owner was Samuel Clemens.
Oh, no way.
And
Really?
for those of you who are familiar with Samuel Clemens,
Mark Twain himself.
Mark Twain himself, our mustached legend.
Who's buried in Elmira, New York, by the way.
Actually, that is very true. He was a resident of the House of Death he was a resident of the House of Death for 12 months, but he moved in 3 years after Fred Andrews' cycling accident.
Okay.
So when he moved in, he was kind of like at the height of his career.
So another famous person staying at this house.
Another famous person at the height of their career. And then all of a sudden, he started battling bankruptcy.
Oh no.
He was fighting depression. I mean, wouldn't you be
Wow,
depressed with that sad
coincidence?
mustache?
Right. Like, I can't eat my soup properly. This sucks.
But he also was churning out some of his most rushed but classic works. So he was fighting. He was good when he moved in, and then all of a sudden shit's falling apart for no reason.
Took a complete turn for the worse.
Right. Twain was a noted ghost skeptic.
Yes.
Yet he wrote of a clear and plain paranormal experience he had in this home.
No shit.
This guy was like very, I don't know, super serious. For him to even entertain the fact that he could have had a paranormal experience is very telling. So one evening he witnessed a large piece of wood move in the air all by itself. He thought something had to be moving the wood, so he shot it with his gun.
That sounds like the people in Florida shooting the hurricanes.
I know, right? The wood suddenly fell to the ground and was surrounded by a few drops of blood.
So it worked, apparently.
He maintained that the blood had to be the blood of a rodent and not a ghost, because at the time, well, not that anything's changed, but rats outnumber people in New York. even though the house was not known for having an infestation.
How would a rat make a piece of wood hover in the air, though?
When he shot at it and it bled, all of a sudden he changed his story. I don't know. He didn't really have pleasant memories at this house. It was kind of where things started going awry for him. He left the house after 12 months, and then his works started taking off. Things started getting better. But then, as we know, he came back to upstate New York and died. And well, there he's buried. He is seen roaming all over that house. So he did not die in this house, but there have been psychics and mediums that have said that he's connected to that house because he felt like his whole career took a downturn once he moved there, and that he was never able to fully recover his career after living at that house. And it was the same thing with the cyclist. So the cyclist is a booming cyclist. Who knew that was a big thing back then? Who, while living at that house, had the bad luck of hitting a child and basically lost his career. After Twain moved out, there was a sighting there. Someone bumped into what they called a ghost perched on a window seat, and the ghost nonchalantly turned and said, "My name is Clemens and I got a problem here. I got to settle."
Whoa.
And then disappeared moments later into thin air. One of the problems that he started having after he moved into that house was, like I said, he was starting to go bankrupt. So some people think that his ghost is there because his spirit isn't allowed to settle and rest in peace because he's got financial issues and that money is keeping him from resting happily.
Maybe unfinished issues in his mind
In his
that are
mind,
keeping
yeah.
him here. And so much energy tied up, when you're having a hard time or whatever, there's a lot of energy expelled, a lot of emotion. And so I'm not surprised that he would return to a place where, that was very heightened.
Right. So again, it's not the place where he met his demise or anything, but it is probably the place where he had the most stress. People hear him pacing up and down the halls. They see apparitions of him, and they see the mustache, which is so distinguishable. That's why they know it's Twain.
Such a distinctive, feature. Yeah.
Another family that moved in after that was the Bartell family. Jan Bryant Bartell and her daughter moved in to the top floor in 1957. It was basically turned into apartments at one point. Ms. Bartell and her daughter moved into the top floor in 1957. And she was a famous actress and psychic. She moved into an apartment which once housed the servants back when like Twain and them would have lived there. That would have been like the servants' quarters. And it has now been turned into an apartment. Bartell, like I said, was a one of her things was she was a psychic. So she reported almost immediately after going into the house that she saw a monstrous moving shadow that would often follow her around.
Ooh. Well, that sounds pretty negative.
One time she said that she saw a ghostly figure of a man standing in the hallway, and she reached out and tried to touch what she was seeing. And she said she felt something, but nothing like she had ever felt before. She actually ended up writing a book about her experiences.
Really?
Yeah. Because like I said, she was an actress and a psychic. So for her to write a book wasn't necessarily a huge stretch.
Right. But to include this place.
Right. But she felt that she had contact with Twain. She also felt contact. Your lady in white must have taken a trip to New York City because she mentioned additionally that she saw a woman in a white dress.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere. They're like orbs. They're everywhere.
A young girl and a gray cat. So she had multiple encounters. And her book, I don't know what year it came out, but the book was called Spindrift, Spray from a Psychic Sea. She vividly recounts what it's like to live in a possessed house, and that's how she described it, was a possessed house. And that's where kind of the tie-in to Amityville is, because I mean, after doing our story on Amityville, which was like episode 3, I think that that might have been a fake story, but it's like the same sentiment of the house being possessed. So
Hmm.
that's kind of how she portrayed it in her book, was that the house was possessed. She wrote about unexplainable sounds. This is an excerpt from her book, and I wanted to read this to you because
Okay.
this is a little crazy. Like a game of 10 little Indians, deaths began to occur in the house. The first to die was a dog, Jan's own beloved Penelope. But within 24 hours, she was to learn of the death of the first human tenant. Whether by heart attack, suicide, or murder, the deaths came in rapid succession. In terror, with 9 little Indians gone, the Bartletts moved away from the Greenwich Village, but the hauntings followed them. After the completion of Spindrift, Jan Bartell became the 10th.
No.
Yeah.
Like right after she finished the book, she died?
Yeah.
Whoa. Whoa. That's weird.
Bartell died shortly after completing the manuscript under mysterious circumstances.
Figures.
She was a sufferer of depressive episodes and rumored suicide attempts, but her death totally led credence to the legend.
Wow. Wow.
But unfortunately, New York City, so many unsolved deaths, it just happens. So who knows what happened to her?
Yeah, especially if you have depression, they write it off pretty quickly.
Now, I don't know if you remember this. The name kind of rung a bell with me vaguely. So fast forward to 1987. This was a genuine tragedy at the House of Death. This was the murder of Lisa Nussbaum. I believe her killer was it her stepdad or her dad?
And it sounds vaguely familiar. I vaguely remember that case from when I was a kid.
I can't remember stepdad or dad, but it was a famous lawyer, Joel Steinberg. So 1987, they got a phone, 911 got a phone call. It was Hida Nussbaum. She said that her 6-year-old daughter, Lisa, wasn't breathing. So an ambulance was sent to the house. When the paramedics arrived, they found Lisa lying naked and unresponsive on the kitchen floor. Her brother Mitchell was tied to a playpen and soaked in his own urine.
Wow.
And Nussbaum herself was covered in bruises and had several broken bones. They
Oh,
discovered
damn.
marijuana, cocaine, hashish, crack pipes, $20,000 in cash. Unfortunately, the 6-year-old Lisa died on the way to the hospital.
Mm.
Her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the skull.
That poor baby.
Her father, like I said, he was a famous lawyer, Joel Steinberg. He was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. And it was charged that he basically went on a cocaine binge and violently abused both the child and his wife. They were going to actually charge his wife as well, but she avoided the charges in the end in exchange for testimony against her husband.
Oh, it sounds like she was being abused too.
Yeah, yeah. He was found guilty of manslaughter in the second degree, and he was actually released in 2004, come to find out.
Ew.
He stopped being a lawyer and became a construction guy, basically.
Well, yeah, I don't think anyone would want him as a lawyer after that.
You
I wouldn't
think?
want him as a construction guy. I wouldn't want him as anything after that.
So, I mean, it's still a gorgeous house in a rich neighborhood for very affluent people. It is still currently privately owned.
But it seems like people move there at the height of their careers and then
Shit
tragedy
happens.
strikes.
Shit happens like on a serious level.
Serious shit. Yeah.
But
Wow.
I mean, it's a beautiful house. But like between the lawyer killing the daughter, Twain never leaving. And that's the thing. Remember, I told you they saw a ghost of a little girl? The ghost of the little girl was seen before this little girl's murder.
Yeah, I wonder where she came from.
I saw somewhere where they said that there were 22 deaths in the house, but I wasn't able to trace back 22 deaths in the house. But when I read you that excerpt from the book, that talked about 9 deaths right there.
Right, right. So there's 9 people or animals too, but
Finding all 22 rumored deaths in the house has been proved difficult for me. but
But there's a lot.
you can see a history of either horrific luck or monstrous or bad shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Shitty luck.
But for some reason, Mark Twain is probably the most prominent ghost,
Interesting.
the most often seen.
It's possible it's because he's so distinctive. Like you see a ghost, you're like, oh, I saw a ghost. But if you see a ghost you recognize, you're more likely to talk about it.
That
So I
could be.
wonder, yeah, if it's just because he's more, it's easier to say, I saw the ghost of Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens.
Right,
Just I saw some random little girl that I don't know where the ghost came from.
right.
I would just be happy to see any ghost. I'd just be like, I saw a
What's
ghost.
up? What's going on? So there has been stories basically from the late 1800s up until this girl's unfortunate death in the late 80s. The people seem to want to keep it low key. It's probably still owned by very high society folk, so it's not a place we can visit or check out.
But if you live there, email us at thestonedwitcheshour@gmail.com and tell us of your paranormal experiences or invite us over to fuck around and find out.
Right? But in the meantime, I think this is going to be one of those we'll never know.
Yeah. Wow. I'm intrigued. I really wonder because, once, people have bad luck all the time, but it sounds like this is consistent. People that live there,
Yeah.
I gotta wonder if the people that are there now have done any type of blessing or cleansing or
Or if their
anything,
life is falling apart.
right? I would have a hard time moving into a place. First of all, I'm very, very sensitive to things like that. Secondly, I'm very imaginative. And thirdly, I'm very emotional. So I would have a very hard time living someplace where a tragedy occurred. I would have to be doing blessings and cleansings.
That's only been about what, 35 years since that
Yeah.
little girl was killed.
Oh, that's so tragic. That's horrific. Ugh.
So I would imagine if it was a hot spot before, there's got to
Even
be
worse now.
activity. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
got to be activity.
Mm. Mm. Interesting places. So, two very interesting houses today. Different types of energy and hauntings, both tragic. Mine somehow, yet again, has a lady in white involved.
Hey, no, wait, that I had a lady in white.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They both did.
Your lady in white came down to my place to visit in New York City.
There's gonna be like a lady in white convention somewhere. Like,
I know, right?
hi, where do you haunt? What's your backstory? Yeah. Are you a wedding ghost? Are you a nightgown? Or are you a ball gown ghost?
Now, do you like to make apparitions? Do you just like to make noises?
Are you a hitchhiking ghost?
I
Do
was just
you
gonna
just
say, are you
scream at
walking down the highway?
people?
Yeah.
Now, do you murder children or are you looking for your murdered children? Because we need to keep them separate.
Right. Or don't forget either you just got married or you were just about to get
We
married.
have the brides and brides to be over in the North Wing.
Right.
Yes, there's got to be a lady in white convention somewhere, I'm sure. I would love to go if there is. Ghostly ladies, contact us because we'd like to be there.
Layla's next venture is she's going to have a lady in white convention.
Well, yes, we am because next week, yes, we am. Yes, we are.
That was good.
Yes, I am. Yes, we are. We're going to have a lady in white convention because next week I am staying in New York State. I'm actually going to Rochester, New York, to the famous White Lady of a
Ooh.
castle there.
What castle's there?
Pretty sure it actually wasn't a castle. It's just rumor that it was a castle. So I'm
Okay.
not sure on the whole history of that, but I will get back to you once I have a little more research. And to prepare for it, I've already done the White Lady Escape Room in Rochester, New York. So I'm prepared for this ghost story.
Oh, man. Okay. I'm going to have to go get some good weed for this next episode. So everybody, run to the store, get your good weed. Sit tight for this one.
Yes, because next week we will be back with 2 more scary stories from across the USA. And of course, loads and loads of the best cannabis we can get our hands on.
Hell
Hopefully,
yeah.
hopefully at the lowest prices. Hint, hint. So, Chelle, we are just about at the end of our episode.
You win.
No, did you make your 60 hits?
Yeah.
Yay! All right. So we both win. I got the best story. You got your 60 hits in. I'm out of weed.
It's
So,
time to go. So
It's time to go. We will see you next week at Wednesday at 4:20 a.m. for episode 61 of the Stoned Witches Hour.
stay high and spooky.
See you then.